Hello everyone. I Today's session is all about FX. I think most of you know what is FX and where we use it in our daily work. FX is really interesting topic. There is a lot of things we can do in FX. Mostly the FX is actually more creative than most of the departments. FX has a lot of interesting things like particles, liquids, lot of different kind of things are there in FX. So today's session is all about FX only. Before starting, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Mohan. I'm working in MPC advertising for nearly 5 years now. Initially, I started as a 2D artist. I worked in rotoprep department. I worked as a compositor in a previous company. In MPC, I joined as a rotoprep artist, and then I started to show my skills. And then I got promoted to FX artist in 1 year, and then from that I'm working here as an FX artist. Now I'm a senior FX artist in MPC. So that's the story of mine. So let's get started. So what is FX? What do we do in FX department? In FX department, we the usually whenever you hear of FX department, these things come to your mind: fire, smoke, liquid, destruction, explosion, and particle effects. This is what usually Hollywood film effects usually does. There are a lot of different effects more than that. In advertising industry, we do a lot more than that. Like FX department is wide here. It doesn't stop only in FX. We also do lighting, sand simulation, snow simulation, cloth simulation, hair and fur, plant simulation, skin deformation, muscles. Sometimes we do muscle systems as well, but we don't have any chance previously, but in future we might do that. And soft body simulations, crowd simulations, abstract magical effects, procedural animation, procedural modeling, procedural layout, landscape modeling, clouds, and motion graphics. Mainly, we use Houdini as our primary software. Houdini is procedural, so it's really cool, and we can really do a lot of things with Houdini. Most of the Houdini stuff comes to FX department, and we used to do all these things. So this is a quick funny slide. You can just see like what an FX guy do, what my friends do. They'll feel like playing video games. What my mom thinks I do. So you can just have a look at it and enjoy yourself. So back to the business. The key aspects of FX. When it comes to FX, there are few major points you all has to keep in mind. FX is all about motion. When I say motion, it has a lot of meaning in it. Even animation has motion, but in FX we also has to depend on the physical parameters, physical properties of an object. And the second thing is variation. Variation in the sense in the world everything has variation. So for achieving realistic effects, we have to add variation to our effects. And the third one is scale of the effects. The scale is actually really important parameter in FX. Not only in FX, this applies to everything, but still FX, the scale is also one of the major factor. So let's get little more detail into each subject. Motion is uh, we can just we can put a broad stroke categorized into two categories: physical properties and animation properties. Physical properties in the sense each object, each element is has its own physical properties. For example, if you take liquids, those has certain physical properties. Based on that, it moves in nature. If you take honey, it is very thick and it moves very slowly. If you take water, it moves rapidly. and it has really high surface tension. So like that, each material is different in nature, and it moves differently. So if you take a stone and throw it, it tends to fall down. It's because of the gravity. So those kind of physical parameters we have to keep in mind. So that is how FX is done. FX, you can manually animate a stone, throw it, like animate it keyframes, but it takes much time than doing it in FX. If you do it in FX, it will look more natural because it's running based on a physical property of an object. We control how the gravity should react to that stone. We control how the viscosity of the object should react. All those things we should consider, and that's how FX is made. FX is all about controlling the physics with the art direction. And the second thing is animation principles. Even though we heavily depend on the physical properties of an object, we have to keep in mind the animation principles still apply to effects as well. Because sometimes even if the effects it looks good, the look wise it might look good. It will have a lot of details, but the motion wise it might not feel that good. For example, I have few slides coming. I'll show you later. Just give me a minute. Yeah, these are few references. I- so you can see here, someone is pouring all these liquids. Each of them behave totally differently. Something is sliding more faster, something is very slow, and someone is like too thick. And these things we have to watch for it. And if we got a brief to make honey, we should try to collect as much as reference and make that look like honey. We have to keep an eye on the references and try to match the physical parameters of those objects. Here you can see tornado. You can see how it reacts in in real life, and then we should try to recreate that, and we should get the motion correct based on the physical properties of the object. Here you can see a building destruction. So how it snaps suddenly and fall down. We have to like observe all these kind of activities in your references, and then we should try to recreate all those things. Here you can see how this is also water, but it moves very different from a small scale water. This is where the scale comes here. We can also make small waves. We can also make a theme park kind of wave, but this wave is looking too huge. If we got a brief to make a ocean wave and we make a, theme park wave, then that might not look good, and that might not solve the problem, like get the look properly. Here you can see really cool looking fluid some simulation. It has a lot of interesting things going on. So these are all this all comes under FX. We have to keep in mind about the physical properties and the animation principles while doing FX. I hope that is clear. Here I can show you the animation principle. This is a reference, and this is someone's work on internet. I found it on internet. So I'll play this one first. So you can see this looks really good. The look of it is really nice. It has a lot of details. The look wise it's really nice. The fire looks good, the smoke looks really detailed. All those things are there, but still it feels little unnatural because it's because of the timing here. What I'm saying is, like, if you see this reference here, there is an explosion happening. As you can see, the explosion is really fast. It explodes in 2 seconds and slowly dissipating in air. But as you see in here, it's like it's like growing. It doesn't feel like exploding. It's the fire is slowly growing over time. So that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to explain as timing. Timing is more important than anything, because that only will give the impact, like how impactful the explosion is here. But here, as you can see, it's just growing over time. It's really good effect, but if this guy had implemented the timing properly in this, it might look it might look really good. So that's the timing. And second thing is the variation. As I said earlier, variation is really important. um, in FX department, we can add a lot of variation in a lot of different parameters. We can add variation to size of particles, color of particles, speed of objects, thickness of curves, and you can add variation to the height, noise, density of a volume, viscosity of a liquid, force, etc. Variations are really important to achieve realism. In reality, we got everything got variation in it. For example, if you take a grass field, it has a lot of grasses. Each grass is not looking same. Everything has slightly different variations. Someone might look taller, some grass look might little dead, it might look yellowish. Those things are those things are making it real. It gives more natural look. Those are the ones we need to observe and apply in our effects. So when I say randomness, sometimes even if we do random to our effects, sometimes the when we see it, it might not look as random. Even if you add random, it might not look random. There is a reason behind it. Uh, it's because of the distribution of the randomness. It might sound confusing. Both these images are actually the same amount of randomness, but the distribution of randomness is more visible in this one. Here it feels it is also random, but it's not as random as this image, because here we have a lot of smaller particles and very less number of bigger particles, which gives more contrast to it, and the viewer can easily find the bigger particles separate from the smaller ones, so it makes it look more random. So that is the distribution example. We can control the distribution of randomness in our Houdini. So this is how I control it. Like, you can just bend the curve, where here you can see less amount of particles. Here you can see a lot of particles, the bigger sized particles. So this graphs controls the randomness. The next one is scale. The scale actually conveys the story. I already mentioned you this, the with the wave example. We can if we can make a wave smaller, it might look totally different. It might not sell the story. For example, if the director gives you a brief to make a ocean wave, and you are trying to make a wave that doesn't look as big as the ocean wave, it might not look good, and the brief is not achieved. So the scale is really important, not only in water, like all of the effects. This applies. Even the explosion which we saw earlier is also like that. So so we have to observe these details in real world to create really good looking effects. So we have to develop eyes for that. For that, we can see a lot of videos online. We can collect references and play it again and again. when there is a brief given, you can go and collect references online and see it over and over again, so you can get a really good idea of how it reacts, and you can recreate the effects in your software. So next time when you are on vacation, just see it like an artist. So let's see how we approach an FX task as an FX artist. Everything starts with a brief. So as soon as the brief arrives, we have to read the brief carefully and then understand the brief. Understanding the brief is really key to achieve any kind of FX task, because the brief is the main one. The director's idea, we have to understand what the director or the one which gives the brief thinks about. We have to recreate that, and yeah, that's it. And then once the brief is ready, once you understand the brief, we have to collect as much as references as possible. We have to go over internet and search for references, and then start sharing it with them, and just make sure if they like the references which we pick, and get the direction from them. After that, we used to start the R&D process. We prototype different quick versions. In that stage, we really do fast versions, and then send a lot of versions to the director so they can choose one of them. After that, they will try to lock one proof of concept. Like, they can pick one of our prototype, and then they will start giving corrections on that, and then we will start to fine tune that. Once the proof of concept is locked, we'll start to break up the task into separate smaller chunks. Like, we will build layers separately. Once the layers are broken out, and then we'll start to work on it, and then we'll combine them to create a visual, like complex visuals. So during this process, we have to keep our network very procedural. So if there is any changes in the last minute, we should be able to adapt for that. So after, and then we have to try to match the reference as much as possible. We usually have the reference playing on screen over time. Like, when we are working, we always have the references on top of the screen, pin it on one of the corners, and we'll watch the reference again and again, so that we absorb a lot from that. And parallelly, we will start to set up the lighting and slab comp, so that we can present the effects really good, in a really good way. There is another thing which we need to do. It's called wedging. Wedging is nothing, just it's like creating different variations out of the same effects. For example, if you take a fire burning, it might burn in like a different variations. You can, the fire is always not going to be lit in the same way. It can be little, maybe we can use a wind force to move it slightly towards left, slightly towards right. Those kind of things we can do. So we can wedge different variations and then send it to them. Once the client like it, they will approve the direction, and then we will start fine tuning them, and we'll send the layers to the comp. After that, we'll get the final QCs. Like, compass can give their opinions as well. We can get our we can show it to our supervisors, and they can actually go over it, and then QC them, and they will share their thoughts about it. And finally, we used to render the elements, and then finally we'll send it to comp department. They will use to do the comps. FX QC. When it comes to QCing effects, there are quite few things that we have to remember. We usually do this. So I categorize them into four different areas. The one is QC on visuals, QC on data, it's a technical QC, and then QC on WIPs, and generally the general QC. So QC on visuals. So as I said earlier, we have to check the main parameters, the key aspects of the effects. When checking effects, we have to see if it has enough variations, if it sells the scale, if the scale is right, and if it satisfies the animation principles, if it is working fine, the animation wise, the movement wise, it looks good. All those things we have to check, and then we have to check the behavior of the element. For example, if you are doing snow simulation, is it falling in proper rate, is it moving naturally? Those things we have to check. If and then we have to check the rendering quality. Rendering quality in the sense, if the render has noise, if the render has noises, if it has proper motion blur, those things we have to check. And then we have to check the contact sheets. Contact sheet means it's just variations of the same element, which is presented in multiple views. Actually, like we can have a same version with the different variations presented in a same slide with the four or more views, so that uh, the people who sees it can see, go over it, go over multiple versions at the same time, and then check with reference. So when doing QC, we always have to keep the reference and try to see if the work is matching to the reference, if the artwork is matching to the reference. QC on data. QC on data means it when we are passing the renders to comp department or passing the geometry to the lighting department to light, we have to check certain things. This usually comes from the artist themselves. Sometimes we also might to as a lead, we also might to check the geometry or the render from the artist. So what we have to check in that, if we have to check if there is enough passes to comp on it, if there is proper art attributes on it for the lighter, if there is the scale and the geometry data are proper, is it not giving error, and all those things we have to check. And then for doing this kind of quick checks, we can also use some tools. We can also prepare some tools to do this, to automate these processes. But still the artist should check check these data passes quickly before passing it to comp or lighting department. And finally, when we are doing the effects, we have to keep our network really organized, because sometimes if you are not well, or if you are taking leave, the other artist should take the file and go over it and properly do the effects again. At that time, if the file is not good enough, uh, it might waste a lot of time for the other artist to look it and understand the file. So that is also very important. While doing QC, we also have to check if the file is proper. Next is QC on WIPs. WIP, because in FX we won't send the final versions always. We have to send WIPs in between, because FX will take some time to completely finish it. So each day we will post WIPs. When we are checking WIPs, there are few things that we need to keep in mind. So when checking WIPs, we have to see only what we have to see. We have to put notes. The artist should put notes about what should we see. For example, we might see a play blast and comment on the color is not looking good, because it's it's not the WIP is not meant for the color change, it's meant for the motion. So those things we have to keep in mind. The artist should also post the notes about it, like what he had changed, what is supposed to be checked, and what is not supposed to be checked. Like we can put, hey guys, here is what I made. You can check the motion on this, and that's what I worked on. But if it is the notes is not there, we might have to check other things, and we might give stupid comments on it. And then if there is any no, if there is no notes on the WIP, we have to keep asking the artist, what do you done in this, what should I check in that. So QC on presentation. Now this might not come under traditional QC, but I have added this because QC, like the presentation is very important for any kind of task. Especially in effects, I would like to pressure on QC, on the presentation importantly, because presentation gives actually a good opinion on us. Whenever we do something, if we present it in a good manner, it is really nice actually. So most of the successful tasks which we do here are always presented in good ways. The clients on the other side really likes it because of the presentation itself. uh, it doesn't mean that you have to render everything and show it. Even flipbooks can be really presented in a really neat way. And when we are doing renders or slab comps, whatever we do, we have to present that in the context. For example, if you have a footage in which you have to add a cloth simulation, you have to keep the footage in the background and then add the cloth simulation on top of it, instead of just sending the grayscale, just the cloth animation in a black background. It might not look good. So we have to keep the presentation in the context itself. Like we have to work on the shot itself. And even the notes have to be presented properly, so that the client, whoever is reading the notes, can understand what is done in that and what he have to see in that. Those things have to be presented neatly. So always we have to check the presentation. Finally, like when as an artist, we have to ask for opinions. Like we have to ask opinions to the other artists, and also ask opinions to the seniors or leads, like how it is looking, like what can I, like how can I improve that. Those things can be like asked without having worrying about it. Because as much as people see the task, see the artwork, as much as comments you get, the artwork is going to improve a lot. So we can also, when someone is asking for opinion, we can just give opinions of that, but not force them to do, like you do this in this way only so that the result will come. We can't force them, because they might have different ideas. They might have really good ways to achieve the same effect. We cannot force them to do it in our own way. And um, in a procedural network, we can't give pinpoint comments. For example, if you have a crowd simulation running, you can go and tell him, like, just remove this one character. So that might be a painful thing. If it is the final stage, we can definitely do that. But in a daily WIP, we can't just ask the artist to remove just one or two characters from the crowd simulation. Or like if you have a distraction simulation running, you can't just remove one or two piece, like in daily things. So that is the thing. So like uh, yeah, that's it. I think like there is a whole lot of thing in FX like to cover, but it's a really very short overview of what can be done in FX, and like what is possible in FX, how FX artists work. So this is like a very short overview of everything. I hope this is somewhat useful for you guys. You might like you might come into FX department and really learn a lot in future. I hope it's very useful session for you. Thanks a lot, guys.